Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hey everyone, we're back. I'm Tom Hazard, along with host Bill Stierle, and this is Purchasing Truth. And you know, Bill, last time we were talking quite a bit about the truth scale. Yes. And that's always a very helpful thing to revisit once in a while, especially when we are faced with, you know, a lot of disinformation, misinformation, a lot of what we're seeing, you know, since the election. And I know that, you know, you've had some experiences just in the last couple of days with people you've had discussions with, either in interviews or in comments on those interviews, which has revealed some interesting things about how some Trump supporters are feeling right now and seeing things. And I think there's a great opportunity for us to discuss this and share it with our audience.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tom. And I am a person that steps into difficult conversations and have just taken the time to be compassionate and empathetic for different people's positions. And when we talk about freedom of speech, this is when we don't have any control about what comes out of somebody's mouth. We really don't, but we do have control about how we take it. We also have control about what we say next. So if we're in a responsive nature, then what happens is, you know, or a reactive nature, it doesn't really go as well. The reactive nature clearly doesn't go well, but the responsive nature, or if we pick one of the four horsemen, criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and withdraw, it does not go well. So, you know, if the press secretary gets asked a question and says, "Do you have evidence today?" and she doesn't answer the question, and she says, "We need patience," she's actually asking for empathy. She's stuck.
So Kayleigh McEnany, you would like us to hear that there is evidence. We just have to go find it. Is that right? Something like that.
She would say yes, because she has to. Yeah. Now, I would actually add this empathy sentence. It would sound like this: "I'm guessing you're feeling torn, and a part of your administration isn't fully sure if there is voter fraud. You're just making sure that there isn't voter fraud, because voter fraud is something that your administration is promoting at the current time. Is that correct?" Yes, she has to say yes, because that's what she's actually doing. And it's really hard to for, you know, kind of the reality of the possible reality to set in, that the vote did not go for your candidate and did not go in the way that the president would have liked. And you're right, the vote, it doesn't look like the president the way it's like. I'm guessing, you know, you're a little torn and it's really hesitant to give us a straight answer when you don't have any evidence at this time. Yes, we need patience.
Boy, does that sound to me. Can I just tell you, I'm having deja vu to, you know, the early 2000s when, you know, I heard people saying, "Oh, well, we'll find the mobile biolabs. We'll find the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq."
Unsettled.
You remember?
So terrible.
I know it's not the same thing. We're talking about votes in an election, and
It's still the same way.
Don't jump all over me, people, because I know there's a difference. But in terms of we need to find it.
Yeah. And then after the wreckage has taken place, after the money's been spent, after the troops have been deployed, after the lives have been lost, after says, well, we didn't find any. Just think of even as I spoke that way, I felt hollowness and a great sadness for all the loss of life. And now all of a sudden it's on, for both. If it was, we have this bad guy that if they would have sold it as we have this really bad guy that's doing really bad things to his people, we got to get rid of him instead of the nuclear weapon that they went after. That's one thing, because then it would be like the coup or the situation in Panama where we took out their leader in Panama because he was allowing the drug trade to move through Panama in an exposed way. And taking more than his cut and blah 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 blah. I just said something really.
And it's interesting how different that is, though, from going after Osama bin Laden, who actually did something, admittedly was proud of it, that caused the loss of so many lives, and that we went and took him out, right, when we could find him. Very different. Well, so let's come back to, though, the Trump voter and the reality of where we are, and let's talk about, like we said, tie back to the truth scale with some of the experiences that you've had in the last couple of days. So can you share with us, then maybe sort of set up why you were feeling we have some new perspective on the Trump voters?
Yeah, the new perspective on the Trump voters. If you think about the no win, there are these reasons why I cannot vote for Biden, and it's a deal breaker. There's no way I can vote for Biden. And my sister's in this group. My sister's in the I feel strongly about abortion. It is immoral. I cannot vote for someone who would make abortion more available. That's her point of view. Now, we can see that, okay, I see that point of view. You can't vote for somebody who is going to make the thing that you're going to fight your life for. You're not going to do that. So that's one. Now, there's like a dozen of these easy. I feel very strongly about Israel, about Israel's identity, about safety for Israel. I cannot vote for somebody who I believe that will strengthen Israel's enemies and strengthen its existence, the loss of its existence. I cannot vote for somebody I believe, that. Now, Trump followed the law. There was a law, a bill that was passed that the embassy was to move to Jerusalem. And he actually followed the law and did what the law told him to do. He didn't stay in the middle. He didn't do what other politicians have done in the past, which is, listen, I'm just going to say some nice things, but we can't do there because then as a world leader, we're looking like we're picking sides.
Well, Trump's certainly not one to avoid picking sides, is he?
He is not, and people appreciated that. And therefore, that deal breaker mindset regarding Israel is he did what, I can't remember where the vote was passed, but it was passed that Jerusalem is where the embassy belongs, not in the other city. Can't remember where it was.
Yeah, honestly, Tel Aviv or something. I don't know where it was, but certainly this had been going on for many administrations, had it not? This is something that had been sort of hanging out there and not acted on for a long time.
And so the press has I'm going to say this because it's going to sound very challenging. the press, the evening press, struggles with covering nuanced and difficult issues without taking a side. They struggle with that. It's really hard. You can get to it a little bit better in a longer format show like 60 minutes, or you can get into a documentary that you can swing in. Hey, here's the 2 or 3 or 4 different ways to look at this. You got a little bit of time to do it, but to get it into sound bites, very, very difficult. And a lot of the shows are written for soundbite consumption. So Tucker Carlson is going to be dynamite at that. He's going to come up with something. His team, his writers, going to come something that is a deal breaker mindset, real or distractionary. To say, what are they doing now? That's crazy that they're doing that now. The biggest problem for the 24 cable news networks is Biden is not going to give them very much red meat to chew on. Trump gave them tons of red meat to chew on. Like every day it was a buffet of tweet, nuance, stepping foot in a pile of crap, cleaning up the pile of crap without cleaning up the pile of crap, stepping a new pile of crap upon the new pile of crap. The pile of crap kind of looks like it got cleaned up, but it really didn't get cleaned up, like impeachment. It's like there's like no consequence. There's no censure. So what? You did this. I won by 1 vote, or I won because the Senate wouldn't do it. And so what, I won, and therefore I won. Well, now that he's lost, he's actually going like, no, I won. I've made up a new reason why I won. It's like a new set of red meat, so very, very, very challenging, very, very interesting.
So we have the, 70 plus million people who voted for Trump that are, it seems that they appear to be in sort of one of 2 different states right now with their feelings, or certainly what we're seeing them express. They're either fighting it because they're in denial that they lost the election, that the votes went for Trump. And so they're fighting that, saying we need to recount. They haven't accepted that Biden won. Or they may be resigned to it or have accepted that he won, and they have actually, it appears, some fears. And I think that to explore that a little bit might help us have a little more empathy for the Trump voter.
Yeah, I mean, fear and hate, those 2 emotions are really essential for us as human beings. There's an article that I've written is that, how to diffuse anger. Well, or how to diffuse hate and how to diffuse anger, and using empathy to do that. Anger's like a flamethrower. And whereas passion is like a laser. So Trump even had that quote. He says, I have a lot of passionate people that are behind me. He calls them passionate people, but he feeds them lines that generates anger inside them, not active passion inside them. So what winds up happening is anger is usually met with anger. Passion is something that you've got to focus if you want passion to work. Anger is just going to get a bunch of people walking away from you. Passion is going like, listen, I really would like to do something about the abortion rate in the United States. I would like to cut it into half. You would? Yes, because I really respect life and I don't want women to go through that. And I don't want the the unborn child, to go through that. It's not moral. Really? You'd like to cut it in half? Yes. Well, I would like to cut it in half too. Great. What are some things we could do to cut the abortion rate in half? Well, what we would need to do is have more sex education classes, because the studies have showed if you use and you talk about sex, children and young teens go, heck no, I am not going through that. I am not going to carry a damn egg. I am not going to take care of a child. I am not going to a doctor's office. I'm not going to have somebody put a tube inside me to suck a baby out. I am not doing, because the awareness is going like, I am now aware that this act of sexuality is going to create a child, and the consequences, the full consequences that go with it. In sexuality, during the part that the making of it, the rational mind doesn't really particularly work all that well.
That's true.
It doesn't work that well. And that's a little bit more now on my scale of truth, Tom. I actually moved up away from criticism, blame, shame. I walk all the way up. It's not shameful, blame. I'm avoiding criticism. I avoid labels and diagnosis. I avoid the judgment of right or wrong. I am observing what the truth I would like to see. I would like to see the abortion rate to be cut in half. I would like clinics to shut down. Really? You would like clinics to shut down? How about take away their customers? How would you take away the customers? Early sexual education. Now, so.
Well, the point it's interesting that you make is that there may be things that people disagree on, whether abortion should be legal or abortion should be illegal, or if it should be restricted more or not. But if you sort of walk back from that event, which is clearly at the end of the, arguably at the end of one part of the process, and you walk it back and say, all right, well, hey, we can all agree that people getting to the point where they're making that decision of whether to get an abortion or not is that is a very bad place to be. And what can we do to prevent people from getting there in the first place?
Very, very bad place to be. Very, very, very bad place to be. It is such a bad place to be because then you're already after it, and then it clicks you out of your ability to have choice. It clicks you out of the ability to really consider the financial impact of this, situation. And now all of a sudden you're, the woman, the young girl is put in a place going like, I can't, this is not my thing. It's not, but to go to the other extreme is to make it illegal. I don't know. You may have noticed this, but there's been years and years and years of the war on drugs, and we can't even keep drugs out of a prison. It doesn't matter the size of the wall you bring. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Well, and that's part of it too. I mean, even if you make abortion illegal, we know from past history that abortion is still going to happen. So let's not argue where we are not going to agree. Maybe we can, though, go to a place where we do agree. Let's prevent unwanted pregnancies, and that sort of meets everybody's needs.
That's right. That's right.
And so that's an interesting way to look at that.
Yeah. I've said this many times on our shows, is empathy before problem solving, because empathy will bring a clear issue to what the truth is. And that's the thing to really kind of get a hold of is that's what tells you where truth is lying or lies or exists, or where the foundation of truth
let's not confuse truth with lying. That was unintentional. Where truth exists. No, that is fantastic, Bill. And that's really apropos with what we've been talking about, the levels of truth. Empathy can reveal where truth is. And that, because I know a lot of Trump supporters right now that are fearing things they don't need to fear. They are. And I didn't really have that perspective myself about what they may be fearing right now. And I think it's important to understand that. I think you somebody who actually fears what's coming with the new administration, I believe, reached out to you and sent you an article because they saw you speaking on a live Facebook broadcast. Isn't that right? Yeah,
that was very valuable.
This one's really interesting.
Very, very valuable. Yeah, that article is very valuable. The title article is "No, I will not meet you halfway. You must change." So the meeting somebody halfway is can be a non-starter in a communication when somebody says, "Hey, listen, I am going to support B," and saying, I'm going to, Nazis are on my side and I'm going to support Nazis. Well, no, that's like that is a non-starter for many people in conversations. I will have a intelligent, respectful discussion with you about immigration policies, but I am not going to discuss with you if you're going to say this ideology is to be applied to immigrants. No, we're not doing that. And in other words, they've got to, there is a request for the work to be done. And it's the same thing with things on the left side of the fence, like climate change. I am willing to discuss with you the reduction of and the realignment of the fossil fuel industry. I'm interested in discussing with you about how that is going to grow and change, because there's a lot of businesses that go out of business. I'm not seeing too many horses and buggy, manufacturers, right now, because we have cars. Well, there are certain industries that through time, are not being used anymore. And it might not be in this year for sure, but not in the next 10 years or even the next 20 years. There just needs to be a movement towards something that we are measuring called CO2 in the atmosphere. Now, you can come up with a massive CO2 extraction machine, then you get to pollute and then take it out and then pollute and then take out and try to get to zero carbon emission that way. Good luck on that. Because right now, if something isn't made for something, it's really hard, right? So, it's the same as, reducing, when California has taken the steps to be electric, in the next 20 years, no fuel cars, that great economic strength that California has, and to make that a thing. Electric cars, California, can't use gas cars here. Sorry. This is our environment. Gas cars can't come. There can be, and there may be certain cars that get, what do you call it?
An exemption.
Exemption.
Yeah.
And there's going to be cars made from the 50s or from the wherever, or there's certain ages or certain classes cars, but basically it's not going to be maximum. It's going to be a negligible, something the environment can handle. So we need to really stare down these issues in a way that's saying, there's a third option. Now, people say, Bill, there's not a third option for abortion. And the answer is, well, actually, there kind of is. You want to make it as minimal as possible and not run over somebody's need for choice. See how weird that is? You don't want to run over somebody's need for choice, all the time,
And to me, this is the thing that's really illuminated as we look at this article. No, I'll not meet you halfway. You must change. This is an article written by the perspective of someone on the left, no question. It is a very much somebody who has had enough of the Trump presidency and everything that's gone on, and he's viewing Trump supporters in a certain way. He has a perspective and biases, I would say, about them. And this article, just to be clear for everybody, and by the way, we have a link to it in the blog post at purchasingtruth.com. there is no empathy in this article, in this
Correct.
what is written as like it's a letter, dear Trump supporter, right? He's writing to
Right.
Trump supporters. There's no empathy here. He's basically stating, I've had enough of this. You believed that. I'm willing to meet you in the middle if you do this. And it's a very it's really, to me, in some ways, a power over kind of a narrative.
Yes, it's a deal making narrative. Absolutely,
Yeah.
it's a deal making narrative. It's
And
not
that's why this person who is a Trump supporter, who saw you in a live stream interview on Facebook recently, sent you this article. He appreciated what you had to say, but he sent you this and seemed to express fear that everybody on the other side feels the way the person who wrote this article did. And
Right.
that is sort of the danger, because that's not very high on the truth scale either, is it?
Right. Yeah. It's getting there into the judgment evaluation piece, which many deals are in a judgment evaluation piece. The wonderful place, the way I like to take a look at these kinds of communication things, it's called, this is really a good starting place. Say, like an article like this is a great starting place because, as you read it once, twice, or three times, what winds up happening is your body starts to actually move to a place of observation, because if you allow it to, if you don't let your biases take over, if you don't let your beliefs or your fossilization of thought take over, you're in pretty good shape, because you cannot support crazy people owning a perennial arsenal of military grade weapons. I cannot meet you halfway by saying it's okay to own a street sweeper guns as long as you promise, only to shoot 100 rounds per day max. See, it's like, I'm not supporting that. The person said, no, it's not. You can use that weapon under conditions, but we can't allow every person to have it without vetting somebody about keeping it about a person that's just a tad bit unstable. Probably not a good idea to sell them that thing, And yes, the needs of the many need to be met over the needs of the few, when the needs of the many might get killed by that thing that you're asking us to do. That's one thing if you're doing something that's not going to affect anybody at all. But if you're doing something that's going to take the life of another person, that's a deal breaker. And I can have a discussion with you about gun policies. I can have a discussion with you about hunters and sports shooters, hobbies that 80% of Americans have already came to terms with this particular issue. 20% of the Americans do not do this. So the needs of the few over the needs of the many, is going to be upsetting. But even though those numbers are really 80% and 20%, the vote doesn't really fully show that, because people are voting for these other deal breakers. They're voting for Trump for abortion. They're voting for the Trump because my sister will not agree with the weapons piece. She lives in Florida. She saw the damage to the high school. She's going like, oh my gosh, and then all of a sudden she's in a double bind. How can I vote for this person? And well, my number one item is abortion. Even if my number two item is gun control, because all of those poor children and those families that were ripped apart through the death of that shooter coming into that school in Parkland, she's still got to vote for her number one thing. She can't even get to the number two thing. She can't click down and go like, well, I'm kind of I'm with Biden on this one. She can't get to that because her number one vote is abortion.
Well, that's the thing that is very hard to try to get somebody to move off of that one big issue, right?
Right.
That's to get to the point where we can, collaborate, cooperate, and make some progress on things. Maybe, she'd like to get to doing something on gun control, but she's not going to help that happen because of this other one issue. The reality is, if we have such a conservative Supreme Court, the abortion's probably going in her direction one way or another, regardless of who's in the White House for a while. But she's not going to see it that way. I don't know how that gets very difficult when you have somebody who's a one issue voter.
That's right. And there's going to be, it's very, very difficult. I would imagine if I took this list of deal breakers and handed it as a checklist to a Trump voter, they would click one of these things and the other ones, yes, for this one thing. And the other ones, almost all of them might be no. And they're looking at it and go like, oh yeah, that's the one reason why I'm doing it. And they're looking at all the other things that they're letting go of. There would be a new perspective. There would be an adjustment. We talk a lot about language perspective on this show. The perspective shift is you're voting for this one thing and you're throwing 7 things under the bus when you're doing that. Certain people can see that nuance and be able to wrestle with, I can't go with this other one. I would like the tax cut that Trump is proposing, but I can't go with that other drive because here's the 7 other things that I'm voting on this side. I want the one thing he has or the Jerusalem thing. I am really, somebody may say I'm feeling appreciative. We voted on it. We moved it there. He did what he said he was going to do. The religious people were happy about that. And I'm happy about that too. Yeah. But you see what happens is that we get caught here.
Well, and it's interesting, as people weigh all the things that are important to them, not everybody gives them equal weight. There's different proportionality, as to what they feel is, going to influence their vote. But even beyond the vote, I mean, the fear that so many people, I guess, have of a Biden presidency, I don't think it exists toward the top of the truth scale of observation and evaluation. I think it lives down further in illusion, or maybe worse on the truth scale, doesn't it?
Yeah, the illusion, on the truth scale, the illusion starts coming up really very, very strongly when we get into blaming and shaming and and labels. The illusion is I know something instead of I am observing something. See, our various different concepts don't help us all the time because they're not black and white, and they have nuances to them. It's sort of like when Freud first put the term neurotic into the psychological lexicon. Yeah, well, they have different neuroses. They're neurotic. They have different neuroses. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that person's neurotic. Eventually you had to ask, well, what kind? Are they OCD? Are they narcissist? Are they this? And you see, all of a sudden I started with another group of labels. No, they're ADD. No, they're ADHD. Oh.
Well, so to me, this article of, you're going to need to meet me halfway is not helpful here. It really reveals the author, who is on the left side of the political, spectrum. It has labeled and diagnosed the Trump voter repeatedly in this article. And it's called a starting place. This is a starting place article. It's one that can engender and give fresh language to saying, listen, I'd really like to talk to you but that Nazi thing, man, I ain't going with it. But I'll talk to you about immigration, but I ain't talking about the Nazi thing. If you got to drop the Nazi thing, but I'll talk to you about immigration. It tries to toggle the person at least a little bit towards the middle, but it's not empathy for the person who gets their needs for community met
with a group of people that have the same kind of pain that they do. And it just happens to be under a Nazi flag. And I'm not justifying it all. I'm just saying the need for identity. If you don't have a strong identity, any identity will work. We might as well make that a tweet. If you don't have a strong identity, any identity will work. It's like, this is my tribe. These are people. This is where I feel better. Well, I don't feel so good with this type of faith. I'm going to try this type of faith. Yes, it's still Christian, but I get more motivated in this kind of church versus this kind of church. Awesome. Go for it. That's your belief structure. Hang with it. You're picking one group over the next, but you can't go to the other group and say, sorry, your type of worshiping is not going to work, and I'm going to do everything I can to take your rights away. That's not what we're working for here in America. We're working for inclusion, which is really, really kind of one of those difficult things. When we pursue truth, we want to stay as close to observation and evaluation as we can. What did the person say or do? Then, before we get to judgment or problem solving, we want to apply empathy to make sure that we know what truth we're talking about. And this is really important for media people too. It'll keep interviewers tighter to what the issue is and not shift from this issue plus this issue to plus this issue. And then all of a sudden they're riling up their base, because that's a part of it too.
Or they're riling up their interview subject, who then isn't going to give them a productive answer that gets anywhere near truth.
That's correct. They'll lock down to defend. That's a perfect example. The example is that they'll click into defensiveness, criticism, withdraw. They'll click into contempt. A contempt sentence is one that Trump uses. Those Democrats, he'll do criticism, then he'll have a bitter contempt as he talks about.
Oh, he says, you're a nasty reporter to women, of course, is
contempt.
Always what he says, right?
Yes.
Contempt,
Yeah.
No question. Well, so that's very interesting. So the article would have been much more productive if the author had approached it from a perspective of, wanting to have a real discussion with people that have different beliefs and opinions than they do, had they approached it with empathy instead of this power over narrative.
Right.
And it seems the rhetoric on both sides is still really high, and we're not getting to that place yet where we can have restoration, have real discussions that are safe.
So I really appreciate that, Tom, because you just actually gave me the idea about what would work with this article. What would work this article is that the way it's written is that there's paragraph 1 is the setup of the thing that is called the deal breaker. Then paragraph 2 is what the power over or the demand is that's going up. What's missing is a paragraph in between those two things that says, hey, listen, I know what you're going for over there. You're going for X, Y, and Z. And I'm hearing you fully that that's one of the things you're going for. And by the way, this is the thing I'm going for. And this is the way I'd like to speak about the subject that you're speaking about. So there is a bridge paragraph that is literally, I can see it right now. I'm staring at the article that literally could be inserted in between each one of these paragraphs that would be helpful to restore the nation. That could really be the life-serving communication for both of the listener and the speaker, between both the Republican and the Democrat, or the person that's just in pain, or the non-voter that's in pain with this issue. Why do people not vote? Well, how many people did we have vote? Over half the nation, or thereabouts.
Yeah, like 150
300 million.
No,
300
yeah,
million.
yeah, about half. Yeah, we had what? It looks like 150 million people or so will have voted, and there's maybe 325 million. It's pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close.
Nominally
And and they're sitting on the fence. The reason why the voters are not doing that is because of the reasons why that they don't want to face these difficult narratives. They don't want to face it, and they don't like each one, and they rather withdraw, as if this is helpful, rather withdraw, meet the need for emotional safety, throw all the ballot stuff in the garbage can, and just know that I don't like either one of the decisions because I don't want to think about the difficult in-between empathy. And I'm just in pain about it because I'm being impacted by these two groups that I don't even want to think. So there is a lot of helplessness that's even underneath the anger and the hate that, both sides have in part with each other.
Well, Bill, now that we're getting into mid-November here, I think maybe it'd be really good to have a conversation next time about, truth and how to have, safe conversations, productive conversations at the Thanksgiving dinner table. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great idea. It's like you're reading my mind now, because I'm thinking it's like, how do you have a healthy discussion over Thanksgiving if, Uncle John starts into, or Aunt Sally starts into a narrative about whatever, that it's not right to kill a turkey and stick it on a table. I mean,
or
where's
somebody
the
says,
tofu?
"Oh my gosh, I can't believe it! Now that Biden's in office, the government's going to come and take away our guns," or something like that.
What do you say next?
Yeah,
that's a great one, Tom. All right, buddy. Well, more to come on this. Thanks.
All right, thanks so much. Great.
Thanks, everybody. All right, bye.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.